Welcome, everyone. My name is Jyoti Venkatraman. I am the program manager for Jersey WaterCheck. Jersey WaterCheck is the data dashboard for Jersey Waterworks. Jersey Waterworks is this large collaborative of many diverse stakeholders who are coming together to solve water infrastructure problems. We're really excited to have you join us today. If you're joining us on social media and would like to connect via social media, please use this hashtag. You will be able to participate today through polls and question and answers. My colleague, Kimberly Irby, is monitoring these question and answers, and she'll be curating. She'll be also responding in real time and ensuring speakers can respond to it much later at the end of the webinar. I want to extend a warm welcome to our speakers today, Wynnie-Fred Hinds, Rich Calbi, and Dan Kennedy. Each one of them bring very different perspectives. And today we are going to learn how Jersey WaterCheck can speak to those different perspectives. But before we start our webinar, we would like to know who's joining us in this virtual room today. So I'm going to have my colleague Julia start our first poll. Julia, could you start the first poll? Thank you. So please go ahead and select. Yep, Julia, we can go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like we have a lot of you who are from the nonprofit sector. There are a couple of you who are reflecting the utility sector, the government, state government, and many others. So thank you. Julia, you can remove the polls for us. So I'm now going to ask our speakers to share a little bit about themselves. I always like to start the webinar with getting to know our speakers a little bit beyond just their bio. So I'm going to invite them to speak for a quick 30 seconds on what connects or motivates you to understand water and wastewater infrastructure more. Wynnie, why don't you begin with that?
Okay, thank you, Jyoti. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wynnie-Fred Hinds, and I am the Executive Director of Stepping Stones Resources, also on the board of Clean Water Action and co-chair of the Newark Environmental Commission. And I am so happy that you could join us. Water, of course, to me is life, not only because it's needed for survival, but the various ways I'm emotionally connected to it. Having lived abroad and seeing how much people rely on water and also how much disasters involving water, the challenges that are faced in trying to acquire water impacts lives. And those have made me even more motivated, I guess, to build awareness and to keep advocating for ways to get people to be more mindful and appreciative of the precious values of water.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Dan, how about you? What connects or motivates you to understanding water and wastewater infrastructure?
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts today. What motivates me most is, as a representative of the Trade Association of Infrastructure Contractors, is that if I'm successful at my job, which in part entails securing additional funding for water systems and for water infrastructure statewide, then all the benefits come from that. Those benefits include fixing environmental problems, protecting us from future challenges that we know are coming, employing people, and fixing problems for communities to enable economic redevelopment and revitalization efforts. Because we know that if communities are flooding, if communities are being challenged by combined sewer overflows, if communities can't provide safe drinking water, we don't really have a shot in New Jersey to attract and retain economic growth for all the other things that we know we need that for. So that's what motivates me, is if I'm good at my job, if I'm successful, we can bring those benefits to New Jersey and those communities, and everyone can enjoy in those benefits.
Thank you. Rich, how about you?
Good morning, thank you. for having me on this webinar. So my motivation around water is people. Whether it's people like Winnie in the environmental sector, people like Dan in the building construction sector, or the citizens that are out there being served by our utility every day. That's what makes people like myself fall in love with the job. We're serving the community. Water is everything. Like when he said, water is life. Without it, people can't survive, businesses can't function. So to me, every day, that brings me back to the job. It makes it important for me and for my team. And, every day we strive to make that better.
Thank you. So I'm just going to round that up and also say what motivates and connects me is public health. Like all of the speakers talked about, I see these systems being really fundamental to the health of our communities. So we're now going to start our journey from ground up. I always like to think of webinars as a learning journey. Each one of you today who's joining us is joining us either from your place of residence or place of work. And truly what connects us, actually sustains us, as our speakers have already spoken, is water. We all are served by this invisible network of infrastructure, both water and wastewater, and the people who manage them. These are essential to our businesses, homes, and communities. And yet, a lot of us may not know who actually is providing our drinking water service or wastewater service. So we have an audience poll coming up. Julia, can you put up a poll question? Do you know who is your drinking water or wastewater service provider? Interesting. I'm starting to see the responses come in. Great. So it seems like almost 95%, at least in this group, know who is our drinking water and wastewater service provider. And that's great because a lot of us are joining this webinar because we are interested and we have found some information. But we also have a couple of folks who may not know who is their drinking water or wastewater service provider. Thanks, Julia. We can remove that poll. So we are now going to start hearing about how can we use this website, Jersey WaterCheck, to learn who is serving our communities. And I'm going to turn it over to Wynnie. Wynnie, how can Jersey WaterCheck help someone who does not know who's actually providing my drinking water service or wastewater service? How can this tool help them learn about that? And if you're on mute, you just have to unmute.
Sorry, of course. I knew I was going to do that.
That is totally fine.
Well, since you asked, Jyoti, I will gladly help you maneuver the website. So Jersey WaterCheck's landing page has a system finder button, which as you can see, and you can use even if you don't know who serves you, which most of you already know, right? So you're like the exception because most people I speak to do not know. Mm-hmm. So clicking on it leads to the system finder page, which you have here. And this allows you to search by system name or by municipality served. So if you don't know the system name, you can type a town name. So in this case, since I live in Newark, let's type Newark City. And as you can see, it's coming up.
It's coming up.
It's coming up. Okay. The map shows 3 systems that serve Newark City, and blue dot indicates water systems and orange indicates wastewater system. So let's select the blue dot. Okay, so you see the pop-up, which provides brief information, including a link to the utility website. And when you select Learn More, it can take you to the utility page on Jersey WaterCheck.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Wynnie. I just want to echo an extra point here. You can use Jersey WaterCheck to know who's serving you. And this dashboard has information on every drinking water and wastewater service in New Jersey. What this dashboard does not have actually is some of the very tiny systems that serve trailer parks and mobile parks. We were just unable to get that information, and our hope is we'll keep adding to that. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. So Wynnie, back to you. What are some stories that people can learn about when it comes to understanding their water and wastewater systems through this website?
Well, the utility webpage, it provides a range of information for you to understand the water system better. And, scrolling below, you can see a set of metrics grouped by communication topics. And each of those metrics help you understand something about your system. So for instance, like Jyoti clicked on, how customer friendly is my system? Because a lot of people right now, since they're having a hard time finding information, they would like something that's customer friendly. So, and when you click any of those, it takes you to the benchmark hub. And who doesn't love a good benchmark, right? And you can see the metric description, and users are encouraged to read the metric descriptors as they really help you give a perspective on understanding these metrics. And the document library has a general FAQ, which is also helpful to look at to understand what is Jersey WaterCheck entirely in a way that I guess my non-metric centered brain can absorb.
Thank you for sharing all that. Wynnie, is there anything else you want to add on how information can be empowering for community members and individuals?
Okay, sure. Well, as you just saw on Jody's wonderful tour, I felt like Pat Sajak and Jody's Vanna White, right? So it's a lot of information to keep track of. And we know that utilities, especially due to aging infrastructure, are going to currently face many challenges. And of course, the customers become affected by that, whether it's through their health, finances, quality of life. Therefore, it is in our best interest to communicate, share ideas and concern, participating in this advisory committee, talking to engineers, I guess, and collaborating with them and other water experts. It has opened my eyes even more to the complexities of the water system. And so having access to all these resources and data on this dashboard is going to empower communities, because I feel empowered from the information now that I have in my at my fingertips. And it's going to even more encourage conversations. Mm-hmm. And I would say even more focused conversations around water systems to increase community involvement in order to find solutions to our aging infrastructure issues.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I really want to pick on that theme of collaboration that Wynnie touched upon, right? Information can bring us together and help us collaborate to solve these big problems. And that's where Jersey WaterWorks comes. Jersey WaterWorks is this large collaborative of different individuals and organizations. Each of them are coming from very different perspectives, but they really have a common purpose. And the common purpose is to transform New Jersey's water infrastructure. And they achieve this through these 4 shared goals. So it really goes back to what Wynnie was talking about. The more information you have, you can collaborate and solve these big problems. And that actually is also the vision for Jersey WaterCheck, right? So we're trying to solve these big problems. We need to have information that can tell us, where are we? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? And what is the change happening? In other words, help us measure the progress towards that transformation. Jersey WaterCheck was created with this purpose of being an online resource to help give information to individuals, communities, utilities, and our state leaders. This slide sort of summarizes the key features of Jersey WaterCheck. I want to take a moment here to kind of recognize the various stakeholders who have been involved in creating Jersey WaterCheck. Just as Jersey WaterWorks is a collaborative effort, Jersey WaterCheck was also a collaborative effort. This included our data advisory committee members who really helped guide and provide the vision. Wynnie is one of those members. It included our utility coalition members, These were a group of utilities we engaged to give us feedback on the metrics, the metric descriptors, and user test the site before we launched it. Rich Calbi is one of them. We also connected with Jersey Waterworks steering committee members and their various working group committees. Dan Kennedy is one of them. And then we also partnered with many different organizations to get the information, including publicly available sources of information. NJDEP is one of them. I believe they have already joined us as an attendee today. And also a huge gratitude to all the utilities who shared information with us and who continue to be part of this. This project would just not have happened without all these collaborative partners. So on that note of gratitude and recognizing that sometimes animation does a fantastic task of explaining in a quick way of what the purpose is, we have an animated explainer video that showcases these key features in under 2 minutes.
Water connects us all, and New Jersey's water systems are essential to our communities. We use water all day, every day. New Jerseyans may wonder about the story behind the water they drink or the waterways that flow through our communities. That's where Jersey WaterCheck can help. Jersey WaterCheck comes from Jersey Waterworks, a collaborative that is working to strengthen our state's water infrastructure. Jersey WaterCheck is your connection to New Jersey water. Every New Jersey drinking water and wastewater system is on Jersey WaterCheck, so you can look up your utility and see data from publicly available sources and information from utilities in one easy-to-use website. On Jersey WaterCheck, you can look up your water quality report, check out how your wastewater service provider is investing to keep our waterways clean, and find out about how our state's water and wastewater systems are tackling issues like affordability and lead in drinking water. Understanding the story of our water systems means that together we can move toward a thriving future for New Jersey, where everyone is informed about their tap water and the health of our waterways. Check out your water system on Jersey WaterCheck at njwatercheck.com.
I hope you all enjoyed watching that animated video explainer. Sometimes animation does a really good job of explaining quickly what the purpose is of the website. So we're now going to pivot and see how Jersey WaterCheck can speak to another perspective, that is utilities. But before we do that, we have an audience poll again. We want you to make a guess and respond to this question. So Julia, could you please pop up the next audience poll? Great, so we want you to make a guess. What percentage of all New Jersey drinking water utilities met primary drinking water quality standards in 2019? Make a guess. Great. So it looks like a lot of you said 96%. Some of you said 90, others said 92, and of course 18% said 94. So those are all great responses. The answer to that question is actually 96%. So just so folks know that. So what this 96% does not tell you is all the work that happens behind it to meet those regulatory requirements. And that's where I'm going to turn it over to Rich. Rich, could you talk a little bit about how Jersey WaterCheck can complement the work that utilities are already doing, help them communicate with their service users, and help expand knowledge and awareness of the work you do? And as you start, I'm going to pull up the website.
Definitely. I love that video, by the way. Sorry, my light just went out. Okay, energy savings. So just touching on everything you've said and Wynnie presented in earlier, Jersey WaterCheck, it takes the work that water utilities like Ridgewood Water have done and puts that impact direct on, shows the impact that has on the community every day. And that's important to show that through Jersey WaterCheck, because we need community support for the investments and upgrades that we make every day. Jersey WaterCheck brings system information into one easy to use website which helps expand awareness and knowledge about water infrastructure issues. It brings a lot of information into one place, and we're going to kind of drill down to that in a minute. And what you're going to see there are a total of 24 Jersey WaterCheck metrics that were created for drinking water systems. Instead of the customer having to surf the utility website or call customer service, they can now find the most common and hot topic items right at their fingertips by using the WaterCheck system. So let's start by pulling up Ridgewood Water and kind of drilling down into a couple of these. So Ridgewood Water is a public water utility system up here in Northwest Bergen County. We serve 4 municipalities, a population of over 61,000 customers. But what is it that we really do, and how can we use WaterCheck to kind of tell our story? So let's use a couple examples. If we could drill down, you could see here are the different topics and items in each topic that Wynnie outlined before. But for a water system, a lot of what's being talked about today is lead. So let's kind of drill down into that lead metric and the number of drinking water service lines reported to, for the water utility. For Ridgewood Water, you now drill down into that, and you could actually see the number for the system and how it compares to others that have been reported in Jersey WaterCheck. So an inventory of lead service lines is important because once the public knows that, they could then help support the need to fund that capital investment for replacing those lines down the road. So that WaterCheck kind of gives all that information in one quick snapshot for the public to see and view and compare against other utilities. Now let's look at another very important one, and that is the Water Quality Report or Consumer Confidence Report. If any of you are familiar with this is the report that's submitted every year with relevant metrics around each drinking water utility. So Jyoti just jumped back to the page. You could see there's a direct link right here on the screen, Jersey WaterCheck, where you could get a link right to every system's Consumer Confidence Report. That report includes the quality of the drinking water. It includes utility compliance, a summary of risks associated with any primary or secondary contaminants that are found in the drinking water. And what's important about WaterCheck, they evaluated how quickly accessible that report is. So there's actually a metric on here. If you could kind of drill down to it, when you'd be great. You could see for Ridgewood Water, it takes 3 clicks to get to that report. I think the average system is from 2 to 3, but probably most of them should be no more than 2. So Ridgewood Water itself has to do some work in that area. And that's another great part about WaterCheck, because it allows the utility itself to do a check on what it's doing and what it could do better. And that's for myself as an operator of a system like the use of this system. So with that, I'll just want to stress again the importance of this. Jersey WaterCheck deepens the connections to utilities with their service users and promotes collective knowledge on significant needs for infrastructure. So if you're on the call today, please take the time to search the site for yourself, share the information with your colleagues, neighbors, and friends. That way we get the message out and more people start to use the system and ask questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. I love all the thoughts that you and Wynnie have shared. So we've been hearing about how Jersey WaterCheck can speak to 2 types of users, right? The community members who may not know who actually serves my town, and then utilities who can use the system to complement and support the work that they are already doing and build that kind of support they need. Jersey WaterCheck also speaks to another kind of perspective, and that's the state level perspective. So if you remember, we had talked about Jersey Waterworks, this collaborative that is trying to solve big problems. And to understand these big problems, we need to know on a state level some information that can help see whether we are moving in that direction. Before I hand it over to Dan to kind of speak to that state perspective, I think we have another poll coming up. This is our last poll, and we would like you to make a guess again. Julia, could you start the poll? Thank you. So we want you to make a guess. What percentage of New Jerseyans see investment in water infrastructure as a means to economic growth, as noted in a recent public opinion survey? poll has closed, and many of you selected 63. A few of you selected 70, 23 said 75. The correct response to that is 75. This is a most recent public opinion survey report that's going to come out soon. And the response was 75% of New Jerseyans said they want to see investment in water infrastructure and they see it as a means to economic growth. For a reference point, the same question in 2017 gave a response of 63. So that's just to keep that in mind. Thank you, Julia. I can remove the polls now. So I want to hand it over to Dan. Dan, how can Jersey WaterCheck give us this information on a state level to help us transform our water infrastructure?
Okay, thanks, Jyoti. And I think you credited a lot of folks along the way in your presentation. I just wanted to take an opportunity quickly on behalf of the steering committee to thank staff, especially you and our funders, for creating this opportunity for us to launch this new exciting work product here. My experience before I joined the UTCA was at the DEP as Assistant Commissioner for Water. And although I don't speak for them now, I do definitely hold the experiences I had at the DEP for several years kind of close to my work and close to my heart here. This effort is not to supplant the important work that happens in state government, but to really fill some gaps. You will find, as we all know, the water is regulated through different federal and state constructs. So at times, the data, both in terms of system data and compliance data, is a bit siloed. And we think that Jersey WaterCheck is helpful to the department in its effort and complements the department's work, including the work of their staff, because it kind of puts everything in one place. Jersey WaterCheck allows us to focus on top line state efforts as well, and not picking on one individual system. It also can highlight the positive trends and not just the negative. We talk a lot about what is going wrong in these water systems. And obviously, it's a credit to our utility operators that we can have such high compliance rates when we know that there are many systems where the infrastructure, you really need to overcome the infrastructure challenges of underinvestment. And the utility managers deserve a lot of credit to make sure what comes out of discharge into our waterways and kind of comes out of our faucet does meet those standards. And it's actually a miracle in some senses, given the lack of investment we've seen nationally, but especially in New Jersey. So you can use Jersey WaterCheck to access some polling data. There will be a poll released, an updated public opinion poll released by New Jersey Future this afternoon. So we encourage you to keep a lookout for that, and look out for those positive and negative trends. So you can use Jersey WaterCheck to learn about public opinion results, and you're speaking with elected officials, folks that decide at the federal and state and local levels how much money is available to system operators to invest in their infrastructure. Historically, back in the 70s and 80s, the federal contribution for water infrastructure was close to 80%, and now it's about 20% nationwide. So we need to flip that script back to, ideally 80-20 would be nice again, but probably maybe more of a 50-50 relationship is probably more reasonable to think about. New Jerseyans, when you look at the public opinions polling, they hold the highest environmental concern to drinking water in combination with reducing greenhouse gases that cause climate change. Those are kind of, drinking water and climate change are kind of neck and neck in terms of big public opinion polls. Less than half the respondents from recent reports claim that they're worried about their drinking water. And that may be because they don't really have information to be worried one way or the other. So as we've mentioned earlier, our pipes are underground. Unless the issue pops up on a community Facebook page or something in the local newspapers. I don't know about you all, but I don't spend a lot of time as a resident of the state digging through DEP compliance data. And WaterCheck can kind of bring that to life. So we hope that more residents are aware of their systems as a result. 1 in 5 respondents still claim that they do not know the shape of their water infrastructure. And I think the folks on this call here today, with over 90% knowledge of where their drinking water system is and how it's operated, as Wynnie said, I think that when you really to poll non-wonks and folks that are not kind of associated with this work on a day-to-day basis, that number would plummet drastically. And if you don't know where your water comes from, if you don't know how things are going, it's really hard to have an opinion about whether or not we need to invest more. So at the state level, our goal is to educate our stakeholders. We can empower them to understand better, and then to kind of vote with their feet in some ways, and support candidates and officials that prioritize funding and investment and streamlining the capital projects that are needed to fix the system's state of repair that we're in. Systems can still be kind of falling apart and still pass these regulatory checks. And it's only often when you get into dire straits do folks become aware of it. So Jyoti has all these different metrics popping up about maintaining systems, and as you can on your own time check those boxes. And Jyoti will check some of them so we can see some of the benchmarks that are populating. You'll see regulatory requirements associated with the Water Quality Accountability Act, which is a new statewide framework on the drinking water side. Jersey WaterCheck metric shows that 98% of the systems have an online presence and making information available, which is great. We've got a high compliance rate with the Water Quality Accountability Act. Over 80% of the systems have met their minimum standards, which is great. We need that number to go up. We also have information about long-term control plans. As many of you know, the 24 CSO permittees recently submitted their to the DEP for their DEP approvals. And you may find through this tool that of the 24, 17 of them did consider climate change impacts. And another metric shows that completion of the long-term control plans will take on average 26 years. So these are the types of big picture data that you can use, whether you're arguing for yourself, for your own utility, or if you are a nonprofit public policy wonk type, this big picture top line data could help you. In the end, we know that the needs are there. We know that there's bipartisan support at the national and state level for these investments. We haven't broken through yet on infrastructure, and we think that Jersey WaterCheck can be a model for other states perhaps to pick up on, so we can build that public support we know we need to press our elected officials to make these investments. Without these investments, some of these long-standing problems will never be solved. So with that, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts, and look forward to any Q&A later on.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate all those thoughts. So we hope you as participants have been enjoying this learning journey of seeing how Jersey WaterCheck can actually speak to these different perspectives and can help inform these different perspectives. I always like to kind of wrap our learning journey with some takeaways, like a call to action. And I have a few call to action coming up, but I would also like to hear from our speakers on what would you like our participants to take away from all that we have shared about Jersey WaterCheck and the various perspectives that they can help inform. Wynnie, why don't you start that?
Good. Well, I would say use the website. Go to it, learn as much as you can, because it's a great way to empower you when you go in front of your representatives, when you speak to the utilities. And you'll be surprised about how much information it contains. And then also use it, to provide feedback, because lots of times, when people are in their own silos, they fail to realize what's going on in the broader sense. So just empower yourself, use it, share it with the community.
Thank you. Rich, how about you? What would be your kind of takeaway or call to action for our participants?
Yeah, it also involves using the WaterCheck website. I think part of what, people need to take away, there's empowerment in somewhat knowing the answer to your question in advance. And WaterCheck kind of gives you the background that you then need to push, whether it's that elected official or director, on the topic or question you're looking to get answers on. You could find out about how much utilities investing in their infrastructure and what their plans are for 5 years, not just the immediate need. So I think this really puts the information out there and starts that conversation.
Thank you. Dan, how about you? A call to action for our participants.
I would say that the power really is in our hands. We lean on the Department of Environmental Protection and other state level organizations to give us this data, but the data is in our hands now. We can't make any excuses for what we have access to it now. There's no large barriers to access at this point. You don't have to be an environmental scientist to get a good snapshot at this point. So, capitalize on that power if this issue is critical and important to you. And then, ask questions. And also another charge is if there's something in here that you see is missing or not right, if you follow the website, you can access contact for our staff and give your constructive thoughts to our program leads. This is a work in progress. I don't know that there's another model for this nationally. So we're open to constructive points so we can improve this system to make it more usable. Something as simple as how many clicks does it take to get to information on our website is something that we should be thinking about. So, please take us up on that, use it, and then also make sure, while you're using it, let us know what you think. And if there's anything we can do to make this better, we're wide open in terms of that input.
Great. Those are all great thoughts. And I'd like to echo the same. We want you to explore the information, use the information to connect and build bridges, to work collaboratively with these community anchors, your water and wastewater infrastructure systems, and share it and give us feedback. As Dan mentioned, on the landing page of the website, we have a feedback form. Use that to give us feedback as we try to make this tool way more better. So on that note, I'm going to now move us to the Q&A and see what questions are popping up for us. Kimberly, do you have a sense of some of the trends coming up in terms of questions?
Sure. So I've been answering some pretty straightforward questions about just some more like logistical items on the website, but I do have one that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. And I'll read it now. This is from Thomas D'Alessio, and he says, this tool appears to be an important opportunity to use by municipalities that will be updating their master plans and capital improvement programs, especially those that are doing build out and capacity analyses related to the new law on resiliency. Will Jersey Water Works be involved in encouraging towns to use this tool in their planning efforts?
So I can take a stab, and then I'll look at both Dan and Rich to chime in as well. I believe, yes, we would like to see even municipalities use this tool. On this Jersey WaterCheck website, we have green infrastructure metrics. And those were the metrics which we surveyed municipality towns to get a sense of, are you using green infrastructure? Are you thinking about it in your master plans? I do want to recognize that when we were working and creating this tool last year, the COVID pandemic had a significant impact in everyone's capacity. So our survey response from municipalities was really constrained because of their own capacities being constrained. So the quick answer to that is yes, we would love towns to use this and also share information that can help us with our green infrastructure metrics, which is one of Jersey Water Works goals. And I'll stop there and look to Dan to chime in.
Sure. Great question, Tom. I actually chair my local planning board, and we're using it already. We're re-examining our master plan actively, and this is one of the aspects that one of the pieces of data that we're bringing in. I will say that it's probably not sufficient to have a complete view. The binary check of whether or not you have an asset management plan and program is not not good enough for a master plan to do right. The real value is to understand what lines are going to be fixed in the next, say, 10 years. Then you want to layer on top of it what roads are going to be fixed. What are your telecom needs in the next 10 years? To try to approach infrastructure and capital investment as efficiently as possible. So when you're opening up the roads to fix a water main, perhaps you should be lining up your transportation capital program for paving and stormwater also to do it all at once. And we know that would be the most efficient way to deal with it, and many towns don't do it that way. So Tom, to answer your question, yes, we should be using it that way. It's definitely a gateway to more information, and it's more than just water. It's about all infrastructure and making sure that water is a primary goal, but it's lined up and coordinated with the other goals of local government, which include transportation and energy as well.
Rich, did you have any additional thoughts to chime in for that?
I guess just to add what Dan said, there's actual details that you could find on the WaterCheck site. There's in the benchmark hub, there's actually a category called Wise Management and Spending. So you could find out how much money a water utility is actually spent on capital expenditures, what their current plans are long-term, percentage of actual expenditures spent on operations and maintenance. I think you could take all that data back and tie it back into that master plan as part of the drinking water section and everything that Dan talked about. You have to coordinate all those efforts, but at the end of the day, they're all going to cost money and require some short-term and long-term planning.
Great. And I just pulled up on the website where folks can actually see to the metrics that Rich was alluding to. What else? What other questions are coming up for us, Kim?
Sure. There's another one that I certainly could have answered, but I think it's important to discuss live. This is from Charles Caruso. He says, stormwater is the third element of the human water cycle. Any thoughts of expanding the website in the future to include stormwater information, especially to assist in support of the new stormwater utility legislation?
Great. Great question. So I'll take a stab and again, open it up for speakers as well. Yes, we do hope to include stormwater utilities. The website, when we were designing and thinking, and Wynnie can also speak to this, as a data advisory committee, we had thought through thinking, we want to have the capacity to add stormwater utilities. We're not there yet in New Jersey, but we hope to get there and include information about stormwater utilities. Opening it up to some of our other speakers to chime in. Any thoughts on that?
Jyoti, I could just add the DEP released new Tier A and Tier B permits on the 5-year cycle for stormwater. So I know folks are focused on stormwater utilities, but we manage stormwater also through that the NGIPTES regime there, and a lot is accomplished through that as well. So I think that would take a little bit different turn where it's not a utility focus, but that's an area where I think the towns are required to publish data, upgrade their ordinances under the DEP rules. Many towns have just done that in the past month or so to comply with new DEP stormwater rules, which require kind of more of a first look at green infrastructure as they're considering options. So I just wanted to mention that this goes way past stormwater utilities. And because if we're going to track stormwater utilities right now, we're not really tracking a lot.
Thank you. Any other questions coming up, Kim? I see one question for Dan specifically. What role can state laws and regulations play in increasing transparency of utility operations?
I mean, I think that state law already requires a lot of transparency. I think it should be done in a way that's done efficiently. Ideas about making data more transparent I don't think we should approach that through like an old view of mailing everything to everyone's house or publishing everything in the newspaper. We got to capitalize on technology because those efforts come at real costs, and that money doesn't grow on trees. So I think if I were deciding at the state level I think that there's definitely a big opportunity to modernize the way data is communicated in terms of requirements for things like consumer confidence reports, et cetera. But I think New Jersey is far and above better than almost any state I could cite. So there's always room for improvement. But if we do make those improvements, it should be really there should be a view of efficiency to make sure that the utilities are not just killing trees and mailing a lot of stuff out.
Right. Those are good points. Wynnie, I wanted to ask you a specific question. I know you've been part of the data advisory committee, helping guide, and you've seen really some of the nuts and bolts of how this website was pulled together. Could you speak a little bit more about how information like this empowers communities and what they can do with it and how they can use that to build bridges?
Mostly for accountability, not more so, first educating the community, because most people, you just know that you go to the faucet, you turn on your water, and that's it. You don't really know where it comes from. You also know that when it floods, like today, it's raining, and I'm hoping that it doesn't rain a lot, because sometimes my next door neighbor's basement gets flooded, and you go in the Ironbound or even down the street, and the whole street are flooded. And so there was also, with the whole water lead issue, there was that distrust with the representatives, and also the water and sewer department. So because people didn't have a lot of the information. So then what happens is, you listen to what everybody else is saying, whether it's factual or not. And so emotions sort of get away in the way, rightly so. And, so then it creates even bigger mistrust because we don't have the information. Now, if, for instance, when we were with the water group, if we had some of that information, right there, it would have been a lot easier. Not that we couldn't find it, because we did go to City Hall, and we were cognizant enough to know where to go and who to speak to. So we collected that information. We also had the time. But someone who's working, who has kids, who has a whole slew of other responsibilities and can't afford to go and do the legwork to find all that information, then, you come across this website, and it takes you to a whole different worlds, that you really weren't aware of, Me, luckily, because I've lived overseas and I've lived in other places, with water issues, I've lived in places where in terms of, the water coming, we had running water, but it wasn't regular, So even though it came out of your faucet, it wasn't every day, With the waste sewer management, all the CSO issues, that Newark encounters, that's why, I'm happy that it's also going to be included, and because a lot of work in Newark, with Newark Dig, Clean Water Action, they do a lot of work around CSO issues that I, individually may not be part of, but I am a bit aware of it. And so with the website, I can look up some more information and, just go there and be even more helpful. So I would say just the empowerment with the education, the knowledge, the advocacy, just to go there, speak to the utility people, speak, with your representatives, and, just to make sure that you're working together and collaborating just to find the solutions.
Great. Thank you for those thoughts. And I would like to say, I echo that lived experience of not having regular water supply, because that's been my lived experience as well. And that drives me to understand water issues more deeply. I see a question up that says, that's been asking, what were some difficult pieces of information to collect and what can we do to make it easier? And I can speak a little bit to that as well. One of the things that really impacted us this year and even last year as we were doing this creation process was the COVID pandemic. It stretched the capacity of all, everyone, but more significantly for these essential infrastructure individuals. So when we sent out surveys, we were very aware of the fact that, this is just one more thing they have to look into. So we recognized that this was voluntary. We were grateful for all those who shared information. We worked with NJDP and they provided us really great information on publicly available data that they already collected. But there were some other pieces of data that was challenging to collect, specifically around capital investments and capital expenditures. There's a lot of nuance in understanding those metrics. So it's not a neat apples to oranges comparison. I know they are fruits, but you just can't do that comparison because it really needs to speak to the system size and the system age and the governing structures by which these systems operate. So there were some challenges in gathering it, and we anticipate to improve as we keep updating this website on an annual basis. Any other thoughts from other speakers on how can we make easy to collect information? Rich, you're on mute. No worries.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
That's fine.
I was just going to add on to that. I think part of that is everything we're talking about, people and transparency. We want to find out what are the things people want to know. And then once we know the answer to those questions, we could build on that information. You may find there's some things on here that, maybe could be drilled down even further. The information, like you said, is there. Some is harder to find than others, but as we get more people engaged and they get their utilities engaged, it'll be easier to get those answers.
Right.
Yeah, Rich, a good point there. I think water needs to catch up to other types of infrastructure in its planning, capital planning. There's no, statewide water capital plan. Perhaps the reason is that the state doesn't control and manage all the water, but there's no kind of big statewide. We benefit from an amazing infrastructure bank program that you get kind of a year-to-year view of priorities, and systems can understand their preference and priority under the iBank program, which is pretty much our primary and sole state support for our investor-owned and publicly owned utilities. But this information there's some gaps there still in our information that doesn't exist. And I think moving forward, Jersey Waterworks, New Jersey Future, and organizations like mine, I think are going to be trying to stimulate conversation around having water infrastructure planned for and budgeted for more like transportation is, where you kind of have a 10-year view. That doesn't exist right now. And you can't, Jersey WaterCheck cannot pull information out of nowhere. So that's something that I think we're going to be having conversation with the state for. And then once that exists, the Jersey WaterCheck could probably do a decent job of finding out how we're doing within those plants. What's the pace of investment? Are we meeting our investment goals or not? That's something that we could build into Jersey WaterCheck once that bigger picture view is available. And I think only the state government can do that part.
Thank you. Thank you for those notes. Kim, what other questions are coming up that you think it would be helpful for us to respond to?
Sure, there's one here again from Thomas. He says, this information would seem to be really helpful to the State Planning Commission in updating the infrastructure needs assessment. Will Jersey Waterworks engage the SPC to update this information and help advance an updated state plan?
Dan?
Yeah, state plan, that's an issue that's part of my career trajectory as well. Tom, I don't know. I don't know if that's a serious investment that the state's willing to make right now. Definitely worth the conversation piece. And I think if a new state plan is going to be put forth, which I haven't heard they're going to, in terms of earnestly kind of redoing the state plan and getting behind that, If they're going to do that, I think Jersey WaterCheck could be an amazing resource for them to be for them to capitalize on. We've all been, any of us have been involved with statewide planning or regional planning, knows kind of gets the joke about the state plan. And many of us on this call probably agree we'd be better off if we had an updated one. And many of us probably shrug a little bit about the likelihood of that happening in the foreseeable future. So many of us are in the mode of not wasting our time. And but we definitely should stimulate a conversation with the State Planning Commission staff to see where they're at and to see if this could be valuable in any way.
Thank you. Kim, any final questions that we haven't answered?
There is one from Chris Sturm. She asks, what other information could be added to Jersey WaterCheck? Perhaps there's, as for wastewater systems, someone brought up the point that, there's not a ton of awareness and we're hoping this tool can raise it. So in terms of wastewater systems, what other information could be added, given that there's not a lot yet?
I'll take a stab and then open it up to speakers as well on what more can we add to Jersey WaterCheck. So when we were kind of creating Jersey WaterCheck, there was a universe of metrics that we were looking at. And then we had to narrow it down. We had to prioritize and decide which metrics would actually make to the website based on the data that we could get for it. So publicly available information. So we have now an entire set of metrics that we would like to add and that can help us tell more stories for which either we might have to do some extra effort to get the information or find out ways how we can do. One idea we have for, in drinking water is additional metrics that can help tell the story for drinking waters. Maybe crowdfunding information from communities so that they can talk about, how water and wastewater is empowering them and informing them and have those content on the website. So there's some ideas we have in terms of adding more metrics. We will be doing an annual update. So that's just something I just want all participants to recognize. So any metrics added is, in addition to these 105 metrics that we already have. So those are some of my quick thoughts. How about these speakers? What more would you like to see in Jersey WaterCheck? Any metrics in addition to what we have?
Jyoti, I think this is a style thing, but I'd like us to focus in the next year on getting this deployed and used. And I think 100 metrics is pretty deep bench of metrics. Understood they could grow over time, but if I'm voting in terms of what we should do over the next year, I'd vote to make sure that this data is deployed, people understand how to use it, we bug check it, and we improve the mechanics of it. And then after that, some period of time that we kind of explore more metrics. I personally think that this needs to be a more utility focused effort, not an academic effort. And I think maybe there's carryover in both, but folks only have a very limited bandwidth for metrics, and we may already be at our capacity for that.
I echo those thoughts as well, Dan.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Echo those thoughts. Rich, how about you? Any thoughts to that question?
I was almost going to suggest some type of user poll in the future. See what categories people want to see more information on. And I know we touched on it, but the Water Quality Accountability Act has a very important deadline upcoming next year for asset management plans. So that's going to bring a whole host of new information available to your fingertips that then could go into here as new benchmarks.
Great. All great points.
Yeah.
Something that I do want to share as an add-on is the Backbone team who's part of helping manage this website. We are looking to include some video explainers behind these metrics. To Dan's point, 100 metrics is quite a lot. And sometimes, we need things in an easy to digest form. So that's something we'll be updating in our website on, what's the story behind these metrics, and put it in an animated form, hopefully that can convey all the work that happens behind it. So that's just something as an FYI we have as a vision. I recognize it is almost noon. I want to thank all our participants for joining us today. Thank you for joining us. A warm thank you for our speakers to being part of this. Please continue to explore and use this information, connect with your water and wastewater systems, and share with your peers. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.